second, or the next stage of the high holidays, because as I wrote in my article for the tidings, really this period of time started 7 weeks ago, and we're, I don't want to say finally here, but we're here, and I don't know if I'm ever ready for it. But fortunately, I have someone to my left who always seems ready for it. And so really, this is a fairly standard service. It's just the tune that is different to get us into the mode and mood of the holiday. And so I invite you to turn to page 18, and please rise. You may be seated. Read in the Ma'ariv Aravim in the English if you would like to join with me. Praised are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, whose word brings on the dusk of evening.
Your wisdom opens the gates of dawn. Your understanding regulates time and seasons.
The stars above
follow their appointed rounds in response to your divine will. You create day and night. You alternate darkness and light. You remove the day and bring on the night. You separate one from the other. We call you Lord of heavenly hosts. You are our living God. May you rule over us as you rule over nature. Praise to you, O Lord,
who brings the evening dusk.
Tamidim lachalin le'elam va'ed, Baruch Adonai, Amari Varavim.
On page 20, Ahavat Olam, a love song in preparation for the Shema.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha. Torah mitzvot chogim mishpatim odanu limadita. Agin Adonai Eloheinu v'shachveinu v'kumeinu nasiach v'chukecha v'nizmach v'divrei toratecha u'lemizvotecha li'olam va'ed ki heim chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu u'bahem neged yomam v'layla v'yavadecha adazim imenu yolamim Baruch Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'yahavata Eid Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha V'chol nafshecha V'chol meodecha V'hayu ha'devarim ha'eleh Asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom alevavecha, veshinadam levanecha, v'dibartabam, v'yivdecha b'beitecha, v'lechdecha b'derech, shachmecha v'kumecha, v'gshadam lehoda yadecha, v'yildodavod b'neinecha, v'chedavdam, amezuzot beitecha, v'visharecha. V'yamishmoti yishmot zaysh, anochim etzavechem e'alpach. Adonai Elohechem emet.
On page 27, we read responsively, "We acknowledge that there is but one universal God and that Israel stands eternally committed to God's service.
We recognize in God the power that has enabled us to triumph over defeat, persecution, and oppression.
It was God who redeemed us from Egyptian bondage and delivered us from the despotism of the pharaohs.
It is God's will that we be free to use our power in God's service and be not bound to the arbitrary rule of any mortal.
Whenever any human tyrant usurps divine authority, oppressing or exploiting other human beings,
the hardening of his heart proves his own undoing. His unrelenting arrogance writes his doom.
Therefore will we never be discouraged nor dismayed when unrighteous powers rise up to destroy us.
Though enemy hosts pursue us, we shall remember how our ancestors were saved at the sea.
We repeat the words of triumph with which they thanked you for their deliverance.
Who is like you among the mighty, O Lord, glorious in holiness, awesome in renown, doing wonders.
When your children beheld your sovereignty, they sang, 'This is my God,' they proclaim. 'The Lord shall reign forever and ever.'
Thus it is written, for the Lord has delivered Jacob and redeemed him from a power mightier than he. Praise to you, O Lord, Redeemer of Israel."
Page 28, towards the bottom of the page, Michamocha.
Malchut Ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira simcho rabba ve'amru chulam michamocha ba'elim Adonai michamocha nedar b'Kodesh no Zeli anu v'yameru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed V'ne'emar kivad Adonai Yaakov u'galom yad chazak mimenu Baruch Adonai God Israel.
On page 32, at the top of the page, an interpretive reading of the Hashkivenu that we read responsively. Help us, O God, to lie down in peace, but teach us that peace means more than quiet.
Remind us that if we are to be at peace at night, we must take heed how we live by day.
Grant us the peace that comes from honest dealing, so that no fear of discovery will haunt our sleep.
Rid us of resentments and hatreds, which rob us of the peace we crave.
Liberate us from enslaving habits which disturb us and give us no rest.
May we inflict no pain, bring no shame, and seek no profit from another's loss.
May we so live that we can face the world with serenity and with grace.
May we feel no remorse at night for what we have done during the day.
May we lie down tonight in peace and awaken tomorrow to a richer and fuller life. Amen.
We turn now back to page 30. I'd like to sing this rendition of Ubitzel in a way that our choir used to sing. Ubitzel ki nafecha das direinu, ki el shomreinu matzilenu ada, ki el melech chanun verachum ada, u'shemo orzeteinu uvoenu, lechaim u'shalom me'ada ve'ad olam, me'ada ve'ad olam. Fros aleinu zugad shlomecha, Baruch Adonai, Habarezu Gad Shalom Aleinu, V'al Golam Yisrael, V'al Yerushalayim.
On page 33, bottom half of the page, Tiku V'chodesh.
Tiku v'chodesh avar v'gasel yom chagenu, kechog le'Yisraelu, mishpal Elohei Yaakov.
Sound the shofar on the new moon at the time appointed for our new year. Its observance is a law for Israel, ordained by the God of Jacob. Page 34 is the Chatzi Kaddish, our bookmark to the Amidah, the private prayer, which afterwards we just sort of follow the instructions on the pages and use the words on the page as guideposts or take the opportunity to pour out the prayers of our heart.
Yidgadal, Yidgadal, Shemei Rabba, Biol Madivrach Irudei, V'yamelich Malchudei, B'chayichon Uv'yomeichon, Uv'chayi, D'Chabed Israel, Bagal V'Margariv, V'merel, Amen. Yeshmei Rabba Mivorach, Yolam Olomei Amaya, Yidbarach, Yidbarach, Vishtabach, Vidbar Vidmamid Nazi, Vidadar, Vidale, Vidale, Vidala, Shemede Kudisha, Recha. Leila, Leila, Migo Bilgada Vizirada, Tuj Bechada, Venechemada, Damiron Bealema, Vimerel, Amen.
for any who are still amidst their davening, I invite you to continue, but we turn back to page 44 for Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol ha-shalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol ha-shalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov v'necha v'varich et Amcha Yisrael v'chol eit v'chol sha'ah b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. B'sefer Chaim b'racha v'shalom u'farnasa tova nizacher v'nigadim levanecha. Anachnu v'chol amcha b'nei Yisrael l'chaim tovim u'leshalom baruch Adonai Osei HaShalom.
Page 50 for Kaddish Shalem.
Yikeda v'yikeda shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divrach yirludi v'yamnich malchuti b'chayechad v'yom echad v'chayedecho b'et Yisrael ba'agala v'zman karim v'yemeru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivarach li'olam olam leah yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalel v'yitalel v'yitalal shemere godesha brichu li'ela le'ela amigo bechada v'shirada d'bechada v'nechemada domiran be'alema v'yemeru Tidgabel Zaladan Avadon Ego Israel Kadamavo Divishmaya V'yemerel Ishlamar Abba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yaga Israel V'yemerel Aseh Shalom Romav Israel, Ve'yemerel, Amen.
You may be seated. As a Jew, and as someone who serves as clergy, I get asked a lot of questions. And I can offer you some of the answers. No, I am not done with school yet. It's going to happen soon. Maybe we should put that soon. Yes, I am allowed to get married. No, I'm not Orthodox. And I can't remember, what other I don't want to say silly things I get asked, but there are many items that I get asked that potentially you have been asked and experienced yourself. But the thing that I get told that's maybe an indirect question the most is the number of times, or I can't tell you the number of times that I have come across people and they learn that I'm Jewish and they say, I'm Jewish too. I'm a bad Jew. Well, you could say that's a statement. In some ways, it seems like it's a question. It seems like it's a question because they approach it to me almost like a challenge and almost like something where they are looking for validation. And I've got to say that the concept of good Jew or bad Jew, something that in some ways seems entirely relevant to this period of time, where we are going to be judged today is, or today and the next few days are Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. The concept of good and bad Jew, because in their minds it often comes down to probably two things. And those two things are, they don't go to services, or maybe they do twice a year, and chances are they had at least one Western bacon cheeseburger. And from that, they dare to judge themselves. As, why am I suddenly forgetting our immediate past rabbi's name? Berman. Thank you. As Rabbi Berman used to remind us that when you get to the gates, after you have passed away, what is the question that you are going to be asked? It is not going to be, how many of the 613 mitzvot did you keep? How many of the 613 mitzvot can you name? How many times did you attend shul? What was the last meal that you ate? No. Instead, the one question that you are going to be asked is, were you honest in your business dealings? That is very Jewish. The concept of good or bad Jew. Liba Pearson wrote a little snippet about it soon after finding out that Daniel Perlman had been executed, writing in Aish.com. I don't know what kind of Jew he was, if he went to synagogue regularly or thought about keeping kosher, if he considered himself a member of any particular streams of Judaism. Maybe he was Refo-conservadoxal. Yeah, that one took me a little while to try to read. Or not. Or if his pretty wife is Jewish. Or if he planned on giving the son she is carrying a bris. And it just doesn't matter. The concept of good Jew and of wondering for myself was part of my own Jewish journey. That I became essentially unaffiliated with Judaism soon after my bar mitzvah due to demographic shifts. Not that this congregation would know anything about demographics. And when you fast forward a number of years, I almost have to do the math, I want to say something like 15 or maybe 18 years sounds really good because that's a nice Jewish number. And one night I had a dream, and in my dream, God talked to Eric. It's one of the only times you'll hear me speak in the third person. But God talked to Eric. And God said, have you been a good Jew? And my response, I could be better. I did not rate myself as a good Jew or a bad Jew, but I recognized that there was more to Judaism than I was tapping into. And in my particular case, I will say that my re-affiliation did include a lot of services, a lot of study, a lot of things that you consider Jewish. This beard came much later. But this concept is one that I think weighs down too many people. When I took a look at what did different people have to say about being a good Jew, Rabbi Joseph Telushkin wrote in 13 Ways to Become a Good Person, Jewish Pointers on Living a Good and Ethical Life, in part, in Jewish teachings, this evil inclination is not considered all bad. The rabbis of the Talmud taught that a good person should not endeavor to fully eradicate the Yetzer Hara, or evil inclination, for within it resides the aggressive instincts that prompt creativity and achievement. Without the Yetzer Hara, the rabbis speculated we would not engage in business, build homes, marry, or have children. So, for example, our motives for engaging in sexual relations might emanate from lust, no less than love, one being the good, one being the evil inclination, one being the good. But out of such mixed motives, something very pure, a new life emerges. From Judaism's perspective, therefore, greatness of character, being a good Jew or a bad Jew, is not measured by our lack of an evil inclination, but by our success in controlling it. The rabbis of the Talmud also taught that the greater the scholar, the greater his evil inclination. In other words, someone who possesses pronounced capabilities will find himself presented, or herself, presented with a great number of illicit opportunities around which he or she will have to exert considerable self-control. For example, it is a greater moral achievement for a person who has built up their business from scratch to remain scrupulously honest in their dealings than for one who has always been employed by another, for the latter has less to gain from financial chicanery. In other words, with great power comes great responsibility. And within that, there's an essence of being bad that allows us to be good, and in some ways neither word applies, because when we have them both, we achieve. Amidst those 13 ways that Rabbi Telushkin listed, number 1 on the list, not going to synagogue, not keeping kosher, but to do good deeds often. We become good people not by thinking good thoughts, but by doing good deeds again and again until they become part of our nature. Number 3 on his list, avoid people with bad character and unkind dispositions. The book of Psalms states, "Fortunate is the person who doesn't follow the advice of the wicked, who doesn't associate with sinful people, and who doesn't spend time among scoffers." Because people with bad characters can easily influence us to become like them. Again, nothing specific about Jewish observance. Rabbi Chaim Miller, in his writing, The 7 Most Powerful Teachings in Judaism, includes number 2 on his list. Hard work is critical to success. No exceptions. Forget any dreams of your life miraculously improving. Most people that win the lottery lose all their money within 3 years because they don't know what to do with it. Judaism teaches that you must work hard to succeed. It sounds so simple, but in the back of our minds, we are all hoping for some sort of major unearned break. So just forget about it. Something free is always tempting, but ultimately it is bread of shame. It compromises your sense of dignity and adequacy. And he ends with one of my favorite quotations of Talmud from Tractate Shekalim. If someone says, "I have worked hard and I have not been successful," don't believe him.
If someone says, I have not worked hard and I have been successful, don't believe him. If someone says, I have worked hard and I have been successful, believe him. Although that was written in the context of Torah study, it resonates much more with me, and I think so many people, with just life in general. Number 3 on Rabbi Miller's list is a person should always say, the world was created for my sake. Obviously, the world wasn't created for your sake, and this is not an invitation to do whatever you want. But what the Talmud is teaching you to say is, I am totally responsible for my world. It's always very relieving to blame someone for your problems. Your parents, your boss, or maybe just bad luck. But that would mean that your life is just a tiny, irrelevant footnote to the real action on this planet, and that's not true. Number 5 on his list is that since the temple was destroyed, God can only be found in the 4 cubits of law. Starting to sound a little Jewish, but wait, it's okay. Because he continues, personally, I hate following laws. I love to be unhampered, free-spirited, and autonomous, but if you just do whatever you want, whenever you want, you will lack an important ingredient for your success: personal integrity. You know how the old joke goes, I have standards, and if you don't like them, then I have others. Well, that's a problem. If you know in your heart you are not a person of integrity, it will paralyze you. When you think of the Talmud in general, all of those volumes of Jewish study and argument and law and learning that takes 7.5 years to read all of, if you only read one, I'm going to put in quotes, page a day, what is it that the Talmud talks about probably the most? Well, I'm going to answer that with a little bit of another short story, which is that recently I am part of a study group. And one of the people in the study group was exchanging email with the rabbi about something that he had read and extrapolating it to other things. And ultimately, he extrapolated it to something sort of wild, which I've got to say is very Talmudic, by the way. Said, so how concerned should I be with the meticulousness of the Shema? And do I need to look over and make sure that my neighbor in davening is doing it correctly? That's that kind of thing that maybe goes back to good Jew, bad Jew. What does the Talmud probably say about this? The Talmud says, don't embarrass him. That while it may talk about ways in which are more appropriate to say the Shema, such as what exact time and in what position and blah, 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 the most important thing is that if your neighbor is saying it, and they are saying it in a way that you think is not correct, put that in quotes, probably don't say anything to them, or if you must, make sure that you do it privately and in a way that coaches love and care and not chastisement. That's what the Talmud is really about in so much of its essence. How do we interact with people, and what is the minimum standard for interacting with one another that will allow us to be good people and have good ethic and good standards? Religion is often secondary in that. And number 6 on his list is words that come from the heart enter the heart. You can best understand this one by inverting it. Words that don't come from the heart will not enter someone else's heart. So speak. act with integrity, honesty, and intention. All of these things, that is what is living a good life and being a good Jew. When I think of two of the people that I remember having told me that they essentially weren't good Jews, you know what I can tell you about them? That they are people who volunteer. They are people who care about others. They are people who are very dedicated in their marriages. They're people who are very loving parents, who are very active in influencing their child or children in good ways. I can't tell you anything about their Jewish practice or non-practice, and I don't care. I mean, maybe I do care because I would love to see more people in the seats than not, but what I really care about is that they are living a good essence. And in that way, I would never dare to call them bad Jews, because they live all of those things that I just read from. The second question, or the second item that people seem to bring up is, how do you make prayer meaningful? That it seems difficult, potentially on a Friday night, when the service is a little bit short. I shouldn't say a little bit, when the service is fairly short. On a Saturday when it gets longer, and over the next week or so in our services where it gets, honestly, a lot longer. That it's very easy to get lost or overwhelmed in prayer. And it is a challenge to try to understand or figure out what it is that you should do or what it is that you can do to make prayer meaningful. It almost goes back to that thing that if I don't pray correctly, if I don't pray well, am I a good Jew? A story that Rabbi Joseph Karasik told about meeting the Rebbe. That he said when he got to meet the Rebbe, Rabbi Karasik was very active in the Orthodox Union movement in New York. He said that in talking to the Rebbe, that he himself said, Rebbe, I sometimes don't feel meaning in my prayer. I don't feel kavanah in my prayer. What is it that I should do? And the Rebbe said, when that happens, just focus on one word. Find the word that holds that meaning for you, that kavanah, and just stay there. And in time, you will find yourself able to move on in prayer, and you will find yourself able to find more meaning. But when you have that challenge, focus on one word. There's a very well-known Hasidic story that relates to what it is to pray well. A certain villager used to pray on the days of awe in the house of study of the Baal Shem Tov. He had a child whose wits were dull and who could not even read the letters in the prayer book, much less recite a holy word. His father never brought him along to the city because the boy was completely ignorant. But when the boy became bar mitzvah, his father took him with him to the city for Yom Kippur so as to be able to watch him and keep him from eating from simple ignorance. Now the boy had a little flute on which he used to play all the time when he sat in the field tending his flock. He took the flute with him from home and put it in his coat, and his father did not know about it. The boy sat in the house of prayer all Yom Kippur without praying, because he didn't know how. During the additional prayer, during the Musaf, he said to his father, Father, I want to play the flute. His father became terrified and spoke sharply to the boy. The boy had to restrain himself. During the afternoon prayer, the boy repeated again, Father, let me play on my flute. Seeing that the boy wanted badly to play on his flute, his father said to him, Where is the flute? The child pointed to the pocket of his coat. The father therefore held the child's pocket in his hand to keep the boy from taking out the flute and playing on it. Holding the pocket with the flute in his way, the man stood and prayed the closing prayer. In the middle of the prayer, the boy forced the flute out of his pocket and blew a blast so loud that all who heard it were taken aback. When the Baal Shem Tov heard the sound, he shortened his prayer. After the prayer, the Baal Shem Tov said, "With the sound of this flute, the child lifted up all the prayers and eased my burden. For this child does not know anything, but by dint of his seeing and hearing the prayer of Israel all of this holy day, the prayer's holy spark kindled a fire in him, and the flames of his longing burned higher and higher until his soul nearly expired. Because of the strength of his longing, he played the note of his heart truly, without any distraction, for the sole sake of the name of God. Now the pure breath of his lips was very acceptable to him, and by this means all the prayers were lifted up." While I certainly don't encourage people to bring in their cell phones and to chime from them, it's very meaningful that even one who doesn't know a single word can chant something more intentional than everyone else who's potentially going through the motions. One of the things that I've got to say that also is really meaningful about prayer is that what is prayer? What is one word maybe that you could say is the essence of prayer? I realize that's probably a confusing way to ask the question. And the answer is prayer is active. We are not supposed to stand still looking at the book. Instead, we are supposed to have a sense of movement, and our mouths are supposed to have a sense of movement so that we can feel the words that we are saying. The source of that coming from the Haftarah that we will read tomorrow, from Hannah's prayer. But even for those who know the words, who know exactly how to be active, there is a story shared by Mayer Birnbaum in his book, in his autobiography, Lieutenant Birnbaum. And he talks about being in the displaced persons camp. That in 1945 in Feldafing, a displaced persons camp in Germany, the Klausenberger Rebbe, a survivor himself, gave a drash after Kol Nidre. He held up his machzor and asked who wrote it. Does it apply to us, the minion of survivors? He reviewed the pages of the machzor, the Ashamnu prayer, the Al-Hayt, going through each of the sins listed, concluding that they had little to do with those who had survived the camps. One by one, he eliminated every sin, finally closing his machzor. And again, he asked, who wrote this machzor? I don't see anywhere the sins that do apply to us. That being able to read the words, is he casting doubt? He says, I don't see anywhere the sins that do apply to us, the sins of having lost our emunah and bitachon, our faith and trust in God. What is the proof that we sinned in this fashion? How many times did we recite Kriyat Shema on our wood slats at night and think to ourselves, Rabbono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, let this be my last evening prayer. I can't carry on any longer, I'm so weak. Rabbono Shel Olam, please take my neshama, my soul, so that I do not have to repeat once again in the morning, I'm thankful before you, the living King, who has returned my soul to me. I don't need my soul, you can keep it. How many of us went to sleep thinking that we could not exist another day with all the bitachon lost? And yet when the dawn broke in the morning, we once again had to say Modeh Ani and thank Hashem for having returned our souls. None of us expected to survive. Yet we tried to survive, but none of us expected to. Every morning we saw this one didn't move and that one didn't move, and as we carried our dead out, we looked upon them with envy. Is that emunah in Hashem? Is that bitachon in Hashem? Yes, we have sinned. We have sinned, and now we must klop, al-hate. We must pray to get back the emunah and bitachon we once had, the emunah, the faith and bitachon trust that went to sleep these last few years in the camps. That even someone who lived through such an experience, who found the words of the book to be difficult to resonate in any way, still found the way for prayer to be meaningful. And so, as we consider on this day of judgment, or these days of judgment, how it is that we have been good or less good in the previous year, as we consider how it is that we can make the prayers of this mahzor meaningful, I hope that you will consider what it is that is in your heart as you read these things, not what is in your tallis or in your kippah or in your tallis bag, I don't know, or in any Jewish item, but consider instead what is in your heart. And when you find yourself getting lost, because maybe things just seem to be droning on, find that word that has meaning to you. Find that way to make this your service, to make it your prayer. With that, I hope that you will find meaning. I hope that you will find a sense of repentance to the relationship with God, and more importantly, to the relationship with one another, in our community, in the larger community, and with all who we interact with. May this be a good and meaningful Rosh Hashanah, and may it lead to a good and meaningful year. Shana Tova u'Metuka.
Shana Tova.
We turn to page 57, 56, technically. And I invite you to rise for Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, Ramemanu mikol ha'ashad, v'kiddushan b'mitzvotav. V'titein lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava, et yom hazikaron hazeh, yom teruah, mikra kodesh zech l'tziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu b'charta ve'otanu kidashtu mikol ha'amim, u'devarcha emet v'kayam la'ad. Baruch atah Adonai, melech ha'kol ha'aretz, Megadish Israel, melech ha'kol ha'aretz, Megadish Israel, melech ha'kol ha'aretz, Megadish Israel, ve'yom hazikaron. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shechianu v'ki'emanu v'ki'anu lazman hazeh.
You may be seated. I invite you to momentarily hold your place, but turn ahead to page 67. read responsively the English of Psalm 27. Again, page 67. The Lord is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread?
Should an army be arrayed against me, I would not fear. Should war beset me, still would I be confident.
One thing I ask of the Lord, for this do I yearn, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all my life, to feel the goodness of the Lord in the Lord's sanctuary.
On the day of trouble, the Lord will shield me. The Lord will lift me to safety. My head will be high above my foes.
In God's tabernacle I will bring offerings of jubilation with chanting and joyous singing.
Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer me.
O Lord, I truly seek you. Do not hide yourself from me. Turn not in anger from your servant.
You have always been my help. Do not forsake me, O God, my deliverer.
Teach me your way, O Lord. Lead me on a straight path. Deliver me not to the will of my enemies.
Trust in the Lord and be strong. Take courage. Kaveh Adonai chazak v'mitzlibecha v'kaveh el Adonai.
And I realized that I did that before, Aleinu, but whatever. We turn back to page 58, and I invite you to rise for Aleinu.
Alinu l'shaveh Adonai.
I invite you to be seated except for those in mourning or observing a yortzeit. May the memories which we cherish and lovingly now recall inspire us so to live that we too may bequeath a heritage of precious memories to those whom we shall leave behind. In tribute to our departed, may we enrich the lives we touch, may we share and preserve the faith, which our mourners will now affirm as they rise to sanctify God's name in the hallowed words of the Kaddish. Page 64. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayichon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shemei rabbah v'barach ve'olam u'le'omayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemed kudishah,
Barichu.
Le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, v'amiran v'yalma v'imru.
Amen.
Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya,
v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom u'v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronah livracha, may their memory be a continued blessing. Is there someone on behalf of the congregation to give announcements?
I'll make a couple announcements. First of all, it's Shana Tova. It's so nice to see all of you here. After we conclude Yigdal, we'll meet in the next room for a lovely dinner. There'll be wine there. Make sure you take some wine. We'll do Kiddush again. And we do Kiddush in the sanctuary because for those who maybe can't do it at home. And then people would go home and they'd say Kiddush. Well, it's just moments later, we'll do Kiddush again. We do it here, and we'll do it again then in the multipurpose room. That will be our home for dinner. And then, of course, we'll make hamotzi, and we'll maybe have a little honey with some apples. We'll see what's out there. But I just want to thank you all for being here. I look forward to celebrating the holiday with you, and I wish you a Happy New Year. And tomorrow, services begin at 9 o'clock. We start a little earlier than we usually do. We usually begin at 9:30, but tomorrow we begin at 9 o'clock, and, of course, on Friday as well, okay? And now we will conclude with Yigdal on page 68. I'd like to use a melody written by a very famous composer named Louis Lewandowski. You should be a little familiar. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtavach nimtza v'yenein el mitzilto echad v'yin yachid yehuda ne'lam v'gamin zov le'achduto ein lo demudagov ve'ein no guf lo na'aroch elav yedushado kadma lechadavar asher nivra rishon ve'yin rishit le'reshito hino adon olam lechon ozar yoreh gedulado u'malchuto shefa nevuado nedano elonje zegulado v'tiv ardo lokam be'Yisrael k'Moshe navi u'mabid et emunato Torah demenadad li'amoel oyan nevio neman bedo lo yachalivael velo yamirado leo ulamim lezulado Zoveveodea Sedarino Mabiles of Davar Begad Matro Gomel Ish Chesed Kemi Valo Notein Lirashara Kerishado Yishlach Legidabid Meshichino Livdod Mechakikis Yeshuado Meitim Yechayel Berov Chazdo Baruch Adiyad Shem Deilado Meitim Yechayel Berov Chazdo Baruch Adiyad Shem Dehilado. Shana Tova.